The wind was quiet on Mars that evening. Red dust floated softly in the air as the sun dropped behind the rocky hills. John, a human engineer, was alone. He was exploring an old broken research station in Mars Sector 3. It had been silent for years, no signals, no signs of life. But today, something felt different. John walked slowly through the remains of the colony. Rusted metal, broken wires, and empty rooms surrounded him. He checked his scanner. No power sources. No radio signals, just ... Cold silence. Then something moved. At first, he thought it was just the wind kicking up dust. But then he saw it again. A quick shadow behind a piece of wreckage. His heart beat faster. He raised his small flashlight and stepped closer. "Hello?" he called out. His voice echoed between the metal walls. No answer. Then he saw her. She was crouched in the corner behind a fallen pipe. Her skin was pale blue, almost glowing under the soft red sunlight. Her hair was white, messy, full of dust. And her eyes, wide, glowing silver, stared at him like she was looking at a ghost. John froze. She wasn't human. She was thin. Her arms shook as she tried to move back, but she was too weak. Her clothes were torn and covered in dirt. She looked terrified and hungry. John slowly lowered his flashlight and took a step back, showing he meant no harm. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said calmly. She didn't understand. Or maybe ... she didn't believe him. John looked at his bag. He had one meal pack left, warm, soft protein cubes and water. Slowly, he opened it. The smell was strong in the dry Martian air. He placed it on the ground and gently pushed it toward her. She looked at the food, then back at him. Her hands trembled. After a few seconds, she reached out. Carefully, cautiously, she picked up a small piece and brought it to her mouth. And then, she cried. Not loudly. Just soft, silent tears running down her blue cheeks. Her hands shook as she ate the food, fast at first, then slower, like she didn't believe it was real. Her silver eyes stayed on him the whole time. John didn't speak. He just sat down near her, not too close, and waited. Minutes passed. When she finished eating, she held the empty packet close to her chest, like it was something precious. John noticed something on her wrist, a strange black mark. It looked like a brand or a barcode, burned into her skin. What was this? Who was she? He wanted to ask questions, but didn't know where to start. She clearly didn't speak his language. Or maybe she couldn't speak at all. She looked tired. Again, her body leaned against the wall. Her eyes were still open, watching him, but fading. John reached into his bag and pulled out a thin thermal blanket. He placed it near her without touching her. Then he backed away and sat against the opposite wall. She didn't move. But after a few moments, she reached for the blanket and wrapped it around herself. And for the first time, she closed her eyes. John didn't sleep that night. He just sat there watching her, wondering who was she? Where did she come from? And why was she here alone? The Martian wind blew softly outside, but inside the broken station, there was something new. Something strange. Something alive. And it had just begun. Silence had a sound on Mars. It wasn't loud, but it pressed against the ears like a heavy blanket. Inside the ruined station, that silence was only broken by the slow, steady breathing of a girl who didn't belong to this world. John hadn't moved all night. He sat in the corner, eyes half open, his pulse still not back to normal. Every few minutes, he glanced at the alien woman curled under the silver thermal blanket. She hadn't stirred. Not a whisper, not a twitch, but he knew she wasn't asleep. Her kind probably didn't sleep the way humans did. Maybe she couldn't afford to. As the pale morning light filtered through the cracks in the station walls, John finally stood up. His joints cracked, his head ached, but he kept his movements slow, careful not to scare her. He walked over to the other side of the room where his rover was parked and mostly intact. Its onboard systems were still running. Good. He needed to get her somewhere safe. He checked the air filters, water levels, energy supply. Everything looked fine, except for one warning. Unregistered biosignature detected. The computer had already picked her up. John stared at the words for a moment. Unregistered. That meant the station didn't recognize her DNA as part of any known species cataloged by Earth or its colonies. That was impossible, or should have been. He looked back at her. She was awake now, not moving, just watching him silently with those glowing silver eyes. He gave a tired smile and held up a water pouch. She didn't take it. Instead, she pointed. John followed her finger. She was pointing to the screen behind him, the one showing the bio-scan. He turned the screen toward her. She stared at the data, her lips slightly parted. Her hands tightened around the blanket. Then, without warning, she stood. John took a quick step back, ready for anything, but she didn't attack. She didn't speak. She walked over to the dusty wall and knelt down. With one finger, she began to draw in the red dust. Her hand moved quickly, like she had done this many times before. Circles, arrows, shapes that looked like planets. Then a small triangle. And beside it, a star. John leaned in. He wasn't an expert in alien languages, but some things were universal. The triangle. That was the station. The star, he guessed, was Earth. Then she drew another shape, long and sharp, like a claw. And from that claw, lines stretched toward both the triangle and the star. Attack paths? He stared at the picture, then at her. "You're warning me," he whispered. She looked up at him. Her eyes were not afraid this time. They were pleading. John pointed to the claw. "Who is this?" She didn't answer. She just turned around and pulled down part of her torn sleeve. John stepped closer and froze. Her back was covered in scars. Some were deep, burn marks, slash wounds. But one stood out, a brand. A perfect, clean shape burned into her skin. The same shape as the claw she had drawn. Whoever they were. They had owned her. She wasn't just some lost alien. She was an escapee, a survivor. John's mouth was dry. His hands curled into fists. He looked at her again, but this time, not as a stranger. She was a guest, not just in his rover, but in their part of the galaxy. And someone had tried to erase her, not on his watch. He held out the water pouch again. This time, she took it. Then he motioned toward the rover. "Come with me," he said. She looked at the rover, then back at him. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then slowly, she nodded. They drove across the empty Martian desert in silence. She sat in the back seat, eyes always moving, watching the sky, listening. John checked the radar. No ships. No drones. Yet. "Who are you?" he asked softly, more to himself than to her. She didn't answer. But when he looked in the rear mirror, he saw her lips move. One word. Raya. He didn't know what it meant. Maybe her name. Maybe a word in her language. But it felt important. He whispered it back. "Raya." The moment he spoke it, she leaned her head against the window. A tear rolled down her cheek. She hadn't spoken in a long time. And now she had. The rover stopped. Not because something broke, but because Raya told John to stop. No words. No panic. Just her hand, gently pressed against the glass, pointing toward nothing but open Martian land. John looked out. Red rocks, dust, silence, nothing unusual, but she opened the door and stepped out. John followed her. The sky above was a soft orange haze, and the wind had died down. The world felt still, too still. Raya walked a few steps ahead, then dropped to her knees. She began clearing away the dust. At first, John thought she was just tired. Then he saw her hands moving fast, focused. She wasn't just clearing the ground. She was writing something. Drawing lines, curves, symbols, circles. inside of circles. She didn't stop, not even when her fingers began to bleed on the sharp Martian stone. John knelt beside her. "What are you doing?" he asked softly. She didn't answer, but her hands kept moving. And then he saw it, a full diagram in the dust. A kind of map. He stared at it, trying to understand. There were 5 large circles, planets, stars, then arrows. Lots of them, all pointing toward one place. A small dot in the center. Earth. Rhea tapped the dot. Then she looked at him with those silver eyes. She was warning him. They were coming. John felt a chill. Despite the suit's temperature controls. "Who are they?" he asked. "Your people?" She shook her head slowly, then reached into her pocket. She pulled out a broken metal tag. Burned, bent, but it still had a symbol on it. A claw-shaped mark, the same one that had been burned into her back. She pointed to that symbol in the dust, then to herself. Then she drew a large X over the small planet next to Earth. John stared. "That's your home, isn't it?" he said. She nodded once. "They destroyed it?" Her eyes didn't leave the drawing, but a single tear fell into the dirt. John sat back, stunned. This wasn't just a warning. This was a pattern. Whoever these creatures were, they were wiping out worlds. One by one, quietly, cleanly, and Earth was next. Suddenly, Rhea stood. She picked up a sharp rock and scratched a new shape into the ground. A spiral, wrapped around a smaller circle. Then she handed the rock to him. John didn't understand. She pointed at the rock, then at the rover, and then surprisingly, at him, like she was saying, "You draw now." John hesitated, but knelt again. He drew Earth, then drew the moon, then pointed at her, asking, "Where are you from?" She stepped forward, knelt beside him, and gently moved his hand. Then she drew a completely different star system, 6 stars in a ring, a 7th star, much smaller at the center. Then she made a slash through it, her planet. Gone. John didn't say anything for a long time. He just stared at the dust, thinking about everything. About Earth, about the silence from deep space, about this girl, this alien who had somehow survived something no one on Earth could even imagine. And then she stood and looked at the sky. John followed her gaze. A tiny flash of light, barely visible in the orange sky. Not a star, a satellite? No, it was moving too fast. A ship. John's breath caught. "We need to go." But Rhea didn't move. She just kept watching the sky, her face frozen, her body completely still, until she whispered one word. A word that John didn't understand. But her voice was shaking. Then she turned to him, and her eyes were full of panic. That was all he needed. He grabbed her hand. "Let's go." They jumped back into the rover and sped off. The dust cloud behind them grew large, but behind that, something else was coming. Something that had found them. Asterisk it started with. A hum. Not loud, not sharp. Just a soft vibration in the air, like something big breathing through metal lungs. John didn't hear it at first, but Rhea did. She turned her head sharply toward the sky, her silver eyes narrowing, her entire body tensed. It wasn't fear. This time, it was something deeper. Recognition. She'd heard this sound before. She'd run from it before. And now, it had found her again. John was driving the rover fast, pushing it past safe limits. Dust rose behind them in red clouds. The rocky hills ahead blurred as he swerved and climbed over the uneven Martian land. "Rhea, what is it?" he asked, stealing glances at her, but she didn't answer. She was still looking up, through the rover's roof window, watching. Waiting. Then, a sudden beep from the rover's dashboard. Unidentified signal detected. The screen flashed. Aerial object approaching. High speed. No ID code. John's blood ran cold. He looked into the side mirror. At first, there was nothing. Then something dark crossed. The sky like a shadow, smooth, fast, silent. Not a human ship, not anything he had seen before. Then came the second sound, like the sky tearing open. A drone. It dropped down behind them, flying low, keeping pace with the rover. Raya gripped the edge of her seat, her mouth slightly open. She didn't scream. She had no screams left. John hit the thrusters. The rover jumped over a rock ridge and skidded down the other side. The drone followed, smooth as a shark gliding through water. It was watching, scanning. John reached under the seat and pulled out his emergency weapon, a compact EMP gun. He hadn't used it in months. Probably dusty. Maybe dead. He powered it on. A soft blue light blinked. It still worked. One shot, he whispered. He opened the rover's top hatch and climbed halfway out, holding the EMP gun high. Wind and dust hit his face. His hand shook. The drone zoomed closer. It was silent, but somehow it felt angry, like a hunter that had waited too long for this moment. John waited. Waited. And then, FIRED, a pulse of blue energy blasted through the air. It hit the drone. Dead. Center. The lights on its body flickered. Then went dark. The drone spun out of control and crashed behind them in a burst of metal and sparks. John dropped back inside, coughing, his heart pounding. He looked at Raya. She wasn't watching the drone. She was watching him, her eyes wide, her face unreadable. He expected fear. Instead, he saw something else. Respect. Like she'd just seen something she didn't know humans could do. John gave a tired smile. Yeah, he said. We're not that easy to catch. But the danger wasn't over. The signal on the dashboard was still flashing. Multiple objects. Bigger. Now. Not drones. Ships. John slammed a button on the console. A hidden tunnel, one of the old mining shafts, opened just ahead. Half buried, never finished, but deep enough to hide in. Hold on, he said. He turned the rover hard, tires skidding. They plunged into the tunnel just as the sky above exploded with light. 3 black ships tearing through the clouds, scanning the surface. Inside the tunnel, everything went dark, cold. The rover's headlights flickered. Silence returned, but it wasn't the peaceful kind anymore. It was the kind that made you hold your breath. John stopped the rover deep inside the shaft and powered it down. Total blackout. He turned to Raya. She was breathing hard, her hand still on the door handle. He gently touched her shoulder. You okay? She didn't nod. She didn't speak. She reached into her pocket and pulled out something small, a silver chip. She handed it to him. John looked at it. What is this? She pressed her finger to the dashboard, right where the communication system was located. And then pointed at the chip again. He understood. It was a message she wanted him to send. It. A warning. A map, maybe a plea for help. He inserted the chip into the slot. Lights blinked. The message began uploading. Outside the tunnel, the enemy ships hovered, silent, scanning. Inside, John and Raya sat still, side by side. In that moment, they weren't just a man and an alien. They were 2 survivors, and they had just declared war. Asterisk. It started glowing in his hand. Not bright. Just a soft blue pulse, like a heartbeat trapped in metal. John stared at the silver chip, the one Raya had given him. He had uploaded the message, but now the chip was reacting, changing. He didn't know alien tech. He barely understood half of Earth's new systems, but this felt ancient. Like it wasn't built to connect to a computer. It was built to connect to a mind. Raya sat across from him in the rover. They were still hiding inside the old Martian tunnel, darkness wrapped around them like a cave. Outside, the enemy ships were gone, for now, but John could feel it. The air had changed. This wasn't over. And now Raya was staring at the chip too, like it was something she hadn't seen in years. She reached out slowly, pressing 2 fingers against the edge of the chip, and in that moment, the air between them shimmered. A projection appeared, Right there, floating in the cabin like a ghost made of stars. John held his breath. A massive spiral galaxy spun in front of him. Dots of light marked different systems. Some blinked red. Others flickered. Softly. He recognized only one dot. Earth. A tiny blue dot on the edge of the map. Insignificant. Unimportant. Until the map zoomed in. Earth lit up with a sudden golden ring. Other golden rings began appearing across the galaxy, dozens of them, all on planets long destroyed, and in the center of the rings, the same alien claw symbol from before. They had attacked all of them, except one, Earth. John's heart was racing. Raya pointed at Earth's golden ring, then at herself, then at him. He understood. She wasn't just showing him targets. She was showing him why they hadn't attacked yet. Because of us, he whispered. Because of humanity. Her eyes confirmed it. John leaned closer to the projection, staring at the data flickering around Earth's name. There were symbols, writing, numbers. Then he saw it. A label, written in her language, but translated by the chip into 2 English words. Species 9, resistance risk, maximum. John blinked. Resistance risk? They feared humans. Not because of power. Not because of technology. Because of something else. Because humans don't stop. Because when pushed, they fight back. Raya brought up another screen. This time, an image of her own planet before it fell. It looked beautiful. Peaceful. Tall cities made of silver stone. Clean air, green oceans. Then came a flash. Ships in the sky. Fire. Ash. No defense. No chance. Her people never fought back. Not because they were weak, but because they had believed no one would hurt them. They were wrong. John clenched his jaw. Why show me this? He asked quietly. Raya didn't speak. Instead, she pressed her hand flat against the dashboard. A new projection appeared. A prison, not a city, not a ship. A massive station hidden in deep space, orbiting near Jupiter. Dozens of small signals blinked around it. Escape pods? Ships? OR prisoners? She tapped it twice, then drew a small human figure in the dust on the dashboard. John understood again. Humans were already there, captured, studied, or worse. The chip had not only carried a warning. It carried a map. And coordinates. John sat back, breathing slowly. They're experimenting on people. Raya nodded. And they're coming for Earth next, he added. She didn't move, because she didn't have to. He looked down at the chip in his hand, now dim, silent again. Then at the star map projection, still glowing above them, as if waiting for a decision. John didn't know what the right move was. He was just a field engineer, not a hero, not a fighter. But then he looked at Raya. Scarred. Alone. Afraid. And still fighting. And he thought about all the others, who never even got the chance. Maybe he wasn't the right person. But maybe that's what made it matter. We're going to that station, he said firmly. Raya looked at him. Not to hide, he added. To find out what they're doing. To stop them if we can. A long silence. Then she nodded. And this time, she smiled. Just a little. It was the first time he'd seen that. And it meant more than words ever could. The old satellite station didn't welcome them. It creaked when their boots touched the floor. It hissed as if it still remembered air, though none remained inside. And when John powered it on, using emergency solar cells and a bypass code from an ancient Earth protocol, it moaned like a machine that knew it had been forgotten. They were 300 million kilometers from Earth, floating near Jupiter's shadow, inside what was once a backup relay station for deep space missions. Now it was a graveyard of metal and silence. Perfect. Because no one would look for them here. John looked around. Rusted panels, cracked displays, dust floating in zero gravity like tiny frozen ghosts. Raya followed quietly. Her face was calm, but her fingers stayed near the short blade she carried, always alert. He didn't blame her. They weren't alone anymore. They were being hunted. Ever since they escaped Mars, unknown signals had followed their trail. Ships, just out of visual range. Scanners picking up phantom heat. Time was running out, and so was Earth's. The control room was still mostly intact. John found an old universal uplink, meant to bounce signals across the solar system. He connected. Raya's chip again. It blinked once, then began to hum. The star map reappeared, spinning in the air, but this time a new symbol lit up on it. A red spiral, pulsing in the outer rim near Earth's space lanes. Raya touched it and looked at John. He nodded. They're already moving in. She didn't blink. She already knew. They weren't just coming. They were already on the way. John started the signal uplink. It was slow, ancient tech, but strong. Strong enough to reach Earth and more. The message began compiling. Coordinates, threat levels, ship blueprints, biological data. The truth about Raya's people, the fate of other worlds. Human captives near Jupiter. Everything. A warning, a call for help, a final hope. But then the lights dimmed. Raya turned fast. John checked the systems. Someone's jamming us, he said. Raya's eyes sharpened. She ran to the viewport window. Then she pointed. A ship, black, silent. Just outside. Not one of theirs. John's stomach dropped. How did they find us? No answer, but it didn't matter. They had minutes. Maybe less. Raya opened a side panel near the wall and pulled out a power cell. She held it toward John, then pointed to the uplink, her meaning clear. Overload it. Burn it out. Get the message through. No matter what. John hesitated. That'll destroy the system. Raya nodded. And added something else with her hand. And me. John stared at her. She was going to stay behind. Buy time. No. He shook his head. We run together. She stepped forward and pressed her forehead gently to his. A gesture, not of love, but of understanding. This was her fight too, but it was his world. John clenched his jaw. No, we're not ending it like this. Then an idea hit him, a mad one. The external dish, the old antenna outside the station. It had its own power source, disconnected from the relay core. If he could reroute the signal through it manually, they might both live, but it would require one of them to go outside. John started to move, but Raya was already putting on the Eva suit. Of course she was. She moved faster, ran harder. She wasn't afraid of space. She was afraid of failure. He watched from the console as she floated through the outer hatch, climbing the frozen frame of the antenna, windless space pressing against her like a void. The enemy ship drew closer. It opened its docking claws. John rerouted the signal, linked the dish. Raya braced against the antenna and slammed the manual lock. With her foot, the red spiral flashed green. Signal sent. To Earth. To nearby colonies. To every deep space. Listeners still awake in the dark. A simple message, auto-translated into every known language. They are coming. We have proof. We need all of you, now. John stared at the screen, then back at the window. Raya was floating. Still alive, still there. But the enemy ship had seen her, and it was turning. He didn't think. He just ran out of the room. Into the suit bay, into space. Outside, the silence was crushing, but his heart was louder. He reached her in under 20 seconds, grabbed her hand, pulled her back toward the airlock. The ship behind them was powering the cannon, a dull red glow building on its side. John turned, shielding her with his body. And then, a blast of blue light cut across the void, not from the enemy, from above. A human warcruiser, sleek, black, marked with the Earth defense crest. More followed behind it. 10. Maybe more. Human ships answering the call. They had heard. They had come. Inside the station, the signal kept looping. The galaxy was waking up, and two figures, floating in the shadows of a forgotten moon, watched as the stars began to move, not away, but toward the fight. Asterisk in the vast. Cold dark between planets, something ancient moved. Ship, massive and black, shaped like a blade, glided silently toward Earth's edge. Its surface shimmered with cloaking tech. Its engines didn't roar. It simply cut through space, quiet and certain, like it had done this before. Because it had docked to dozens of worlds, and all of them had fallen. It had no name. Just a designation. Cleanser-4. To the enemy, Earth was nothing but the next page in a long, silent history of erasure. Another dot to be wiped clean. Another voice to silence. But this time, the silence was broken. It started with a light, one small, flashing beacon floating ahead of the cleanser. Ship. It wasn't a bomb. It wasn't a threat. It was a message. The same one John and Raya had sent from Jupiter's orbit. Still looping. Still pulsing. They are coming. We have proof. We need all of you. Now, the ship ignored it. But the humans didn (D) above Earth. Battlecruisers formed a wall of light. They were old ships, patched and repurposed. Some were built during the Mars expansion. Others from forgotten colonies. A few weren't even military, just cargo vessels refitted with armor and cannons by volunteer crews. But every single one had one thing in common. They answered the signal. They didn't wait for a leader. They didn't ask for permission. They just showed up, because someone had warned them. Someone had risked everything to say, "We're not alone, and we don't have to die alone." Inside one of the lead ships, John stood near the main deck window. His suit was scratched, eyes red from lack of sleep, but he stood tall. Beside him, Raya watched in silence, her eyes wide with disbelief. For the first time, she was seeing something her people never got the chance to see. A world that refused to go quietly. The enemy fleet arrived, 12 ships, each larger than anything humans had ever faced. Their weapons charged. Without sound. Their formation perfect. Their confidence complete. John could almost hear it in the air, the quiet arrogance of something that had never lost. Then came a voice over the human comms. A female pilot. Calm, steady. "We've got eyes on target. You all know what this means. We're not just fighting for Earth. We're fighting for everyone they thought didn't matter." And then she said the words that would be remembered for decades. "Let's show them what humans do when they're scared and angry." The sky tore open. Lasers lit the blackness like wildfire. The enemy ships moved in tight formation, precise and clean. But humans didn't fight like that. They were messy. Unpredictable. Wild. Some ships broke formation early, diving under. Others looped wide, drawing fire. One cruiser overloaded its core reactor and slammed directly into an enemy frigate, a suicide move that took two with it. And in the middle of the chaos, Raya stood on the bridge with John, watching it all unfold. She wasn't crying, she wasn't frozen. She was smiling, a real, wide, defiant smile, because for the first time in her life, the story was changing. Then came the moment. The cleanser ship charged its primary weapon, a beam capable of slicing a continent in half. It aimed directly at Earth. John saw the readings. No time to redirect. No time to escape. He looked at Raya. She stepped forward, quietly reached into her suit, pulled out the original chip, the same one that carried the warning. But now, it glowed gold. She pressed it to the main console. A burst of symbols appeared. An override code, something her people had hidden in their tech. A backdoor meant to disable the cleanser core. A last act of rebellion her people never got to use. But she did. John activated the sequence. The signal shot forward, invisible, fast, buried in the same frequency the cleanser used to link its own ships. For one brief second, nothing happened. Then, the cleanser ship paused. Its weapons dimmed. Its formation cracked. And then, without a sound, it exploded from the inside out, as if the universe itself had reached in and crushed it like a tin can. The sky went silent. The Enemy fleet turned disoriented, confused, and then retreated one by one. They jumped into hyperspace, fading from Earth's orbit. No war cry, no final threat. They just ran. For the first time in their history, they had been answered. And the answer was no back on Earth. The signal from the battle replayed again and again. Millions watched. They didn't just see ships and lasers. They saw a man and an alien woman standing side by side. Tired, broken, but undefeated. Later, in a quiet room aboard the human command ship, Raya stood at a window, watching Earth rise through the stars. John stood beside her. She spoke, her voice soft, careful in English. "Your people, they don't run." John smiled. "Sometimes we do," he said. "But then we turn around." She nodded. "That's why they feared you." He looked at her. "Maybe now they'll fear all of us." And for the first time since her world burned, Raya believed in something again.